Welcome in. For those of y'all who are just getting in, Grace, welcome in. This is our swing video here at the Sports Club. And we're going to talk a little bit about some kind of club body physics and kind of how the club is moving down around impact, and then overall in the entire swing as well. So not going to be necessarily the most relevant information that you need to know to play at a high level or to play better necessarily. But maybe like if you have some conventions and some concepts that around like how the club is moving around impact or how the club and the body move and swing that are wildly at odds with what is actually happening, then it can definitely be a constraint on performance. So I thought for the purposes of today's class, a bit more kind of discussion based, obviously, might be good to talk through some of those concepts. We'll give it just a couple more minutes. I had at least like 10, I think 10 or so in the last couple of classes. Looks like I've got 6. Well, I also wanted to open this up to anyone who has a question, right? So if you have a question around anything in golf, feel free to type it in the chat below. Do I sound okay? All good from an audio perspective? If so, just give me like a thumbs up or sounds good if you're here in the chat, so I can also confirm that you can indeed text in the chat. All right, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Yes. Tyler, welcome in. All right. 203, we're going to give it maybe 1 or 2 more swings, if you will. It did mostly draws today. I'm going to see if I can get one to go the other direction here. So you have a little fade, which is not my normal. Like when I'm swinging well, I don't necessarily like curve it much, but it might be interesting to just see, hey, can I do a little fade here? Definitely going to fade it. Did not get the club cut, so did not read spin axis, so that's why it didn't curve. But I think it faded. All right, here we go. We're up to 8. We're at 204. Tyler, welcome in. Give folks a couple more minutes. Substack app is not the most intuitive, I found. You kind of have to get used to, some of the different terms they give the different pages, but it's serves the purpose for these live streams, and yeah, I've kind of enjoyed using it. That might fade. Yep, there we go. So that one I actually read. Might not be able to see it, right? But you get the little, yeah, you can kind of see it. A driver swing? Sure. Hands are getting kind of sweaty, so I'm going to have to put a glove on. But I should be sufficiently warmed up. I've been making swings prior to these live streams for pretty much all day. So we'll see. I would say like probably I'd expect club speed to be probably in the 105 to 106 range right now. I can get it up to the 109, 10, 11 range. But we're not going to go crazy hard at this one. I'm going to have to move this over a little bit. There we go. So you can kind of see. Oh, yeah. No, Tyler, this is actually at the Sports Club, at the kind of in the downstairs next to the indoor tennis courts. But it's called the Sports Club Swing Studio. So we use this in the wintertime with our members. They can actually book it, and we also use it for lessons as well. Ball speed was only 156, kind of banging off the toe, but pump speed was kind of good. It was 1 and 9 pump speed. Do one or two more, and then we'll get started. Thank y'all for coming in. Let's see how many we got now. Got 9. Can we use it as students? If you are a student member, then the answer is yes. But for just making a reservation and coming and booking the time, it is only reserved for members in that case. All right. There you go. There's 160 ball speed, 268, 269 carry, 278 total. But yeah, for a second driver swing of the day, I'd be decently happy with that. All right, let's get to it. I'm going to switch the angle around here a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so today we're talking about kind of the science of how the club moves down around impact and how the body moves and how we put force into the grip in order to make a golf swing, right? And actually what is happening down around impact. So before we get into it, just a couple definitions. 2 that have to do with how the club move, and then 2 that have to do with how I'm applying force to the grip. All right. So the first set of definitions about the club is going to be relative to the center of mass. So if I just think about kind of the balance point of this golf club, somewhere right about here. Okay. And if I'm just going to go ahead and close my fist here and just act as this is the center, act as if my hand here is the center of mass of the club. Okay. I have 2 ways that this club moves in space. I have what we call linear, right, which would be the club not changing orientation. You can see how the club is still in the same orientation, right? But I can change where it is in space, right? We're going to call this linear momentum. All right. So I need to create linear momentum in a golf swing, right? And it happens in kind of a curved path, kind of like so. So there's my backswing, and then there's the follow through, and there's the end of the swing. Now, I'm attached to the grip. So you can picture how this, right, is not real, right? This does not look like a golf swing. But when you think about the center of mass of the club, that is generally the path that it's going to travel. I have another way that the club center of mass moves, which we're going to call angular, right? So without changing where my hand is in space, I'm just going to twist it, right? And I can twist it in some different ways, right? Some different angles, but we're going to call this angular. All right. So 2 main definitions. I have linear and I have angular. The golf swing is a blend of linear, okay, and angular. All right. As I start to swing this golf club, you can start to picture, hey, the balance point of the club is traveling in space from a linear perspective, but also about its center of mass, it's spinning as well. All right. So I need to understand that those are the 2 ways the club moves. Now, specifically down around impact, let's talk about, hey, here's my golf ball, right? I am projecting the golf ball this way. Okay. So it's not just angular. So a lot of golfers believe that, hey, I'm going to get underneath this golf ball and I'm going to essentially scoop and get underneath it and lift the golf ball up in the air. All right. That is not what actually happens. That would be very dysfunctional in a golf context. And you can picture like, hey, if the ball's sitting on the ground, if I thought that I could just purely angularly rotate this club into the golf ball, you can see that, hey, like that's not going to be probably a great option for me. That ball's not going to hit the club face very easily, right? I'd have to get the club kind of underneath the golf ball, so to speak, for that to work, right? And you can imagine if this ball's sitting on the ground, I'm kind of banging into the ground a bit too early. And if I don't enjoy how that ground interaction is happening, then I'm going to just avoid it altogether. So like, see, right, my hand here is not moving in space. This is pure angular. This is not what's happening down around impact. All right. The other end of the spectrum is also not true. Right. So a lot of golfers also believe, or I see it happen in both camps, that I'm just going to linearly move this club into the golf ball, kind of like so. Right. Some people have been told maybe to hit down. So again, without changing the orientation, without any angular, some golfers are trying to just move this club from a linear perspective into the golf ball as well. All right. In reality, we have a mix of both linear, which is this moving in space, and angular, this changing orientation here. So from the face on, again, if I'm hitting the shot this way, I'm going to put my hand right on the center of mass. What is actually happening is down around impact, the center mass is actually moving. It's moving down, but then it's actually moving down less, moving down less, moving down less, moving down less. Right? It might even start to kind of level out as I'm making impact. What you can also see is that it's blended pretty nicely with angular, right? So you can see the orientation here is changing, right? So I get kind of a nice blend of linear and angular together. When the ball is sitting on the ground, the club head continues to rotate and it reaches its lowest point after contact. When the ball's up on a tee, the club is actually reaches its lowest point. The club head reaches its lowest point prior to impact, and I'm catching it on the upswing. All right. But in both scenarios, I'm blending that linear and I'm blending the angular in kind of a nice ratio. Right. From the side perspective, if I'm hitting this way, can you appreciate that the club, right, if it's sitting on the ground like so, right, is not built at a 90-degree angle, right? It's built on a 45. So if we're talking about the linear, again, this club does not move in a straight line to the ball. Certainly not straight back, straight through. It also doesn't move in a straight line on this angle either, right? So the actual path from a linear perspective, you can kind of see, right, is actually curving. All right. So my center of mass, my hand right here, is actually curving into impact. All right. If I kind of give you the side on here, right? That's easier. Right. It's actually coming in here, and my hand is not moving in a straight line. Right. It's actually curving. Oh, that was wrong. It's actually curving kind of like so. And that's what we're going to want to see. Right. So from this perspective here, I get a little bit of linear. I get a little bit of angular, right? This is kind of how we want the club swinging into the golf ball, right? Now, taking that actually with my grip, nice and slow here, but you're going to start to see how, imagine the balance point of this golf club, right? It's moving linearly. It's kind of curving, right? And the club did not stay in the same orientation, right? I did not take it down into the ball like this. I allowed the club to angularly rotate as well. So there's curving from a linear perspective as the club rotates about itself. Right? You can actually, what's very interesting is that the center of mass is kind of leveling out, but watch where my hands are going. Watch where the grip is traveling, coming into impact. If you can actually see this, the grip end of the club, the part that I'm holding on to, is actually moving up and it's moving away from me. Sorry, away from the golf ball. All right. And this is a fundamental concept that you need to understand when it comes to linear versus angular momentum of the club, right? The linear, okay, the path of the grip of the club head, while it is kind of leveling out, flattening out, what we're going to get to in a little bit when it comes to the moment of force, you're actually pulling the grip up and away from the golf ball as the club head rotates and swings into it. Right. So what golfers think they need to do is they need to force the club to the ball. Again, this would be too much linear. Okay. This would be too much angular. See how my hands are kind of staying in the same place in space. And this is not what happens either. So this would be too much. This would be too much linear, right? This would be too much angular, right? There's a blend of the linear and the angular as I come into impact. Any questions on that? Yeah. So with the driver, for sure, like that idea of now with the driver, what's interesting is that with the center of mass with the driver, right, when the ball's on the tee, is actually going to be moving up into impact, right? But with the driver, it's going to look something like this. So this thing is swinging into it. The club head reaches its lowest point, and then it actually starts to swing up, right, as it's hitting the golf ball, right? But that is 100% what's happening with the driver as well. All right. So big takeaway there is the club's not just doing this. It's not just doing this, right? It's traveling on an arc as it rotates in space. As it rotates in space. Okay. I'll show you one or two here. I'll do these relatively slow. All right. If I gave it too much angular, it would look something kind of like so. If I gave it too much linear, it wouldn't even look like a golf swing. The club would just kind of do this, right? So I have both going on, and that is how the club is swinging into the golf. Any other questions on that? Thank you for that, Arjun. Right on. Okay. So, how do I create in a golf swing context the angular and the linear? All right. One of my good coaching friends would get on me for saying linear. He likes for it to be called curvy linear, right? Because it's not in a straight line, right? It's in a curve. Again, I have two main options. I have the couple, which would be imagine like like you've got a bottle cap, right? You're trying to open a bottle cap. Well, really, what you're doing to create that rotation of the cap is you're pushing on both sides equal and opposite directions. All right. Now, in a golf swing context, it's not a pure couple. It's not a pure couple. A pure couple would be if I'm holding. So, again, the balance point's right here. If I had one connection point on this side and then another connection point on this side, right? And if I created that couple, you can see how the center of mass is not changing orientation. There's no linear to the center of mass, it's pure angular. This is what we would call a pure couple. But because I'm holding the grip, and by the way, my hands are relatively close together on this side of the club, when I go to create a couple, you can see that the club rotates, but the center of mass, you can just kind of picture where my hand was here. The center of mass is also moving in space. So this couple is not a true couple. I'm creating some angular, the club is rotating, and linear through this push and pull action. I might have a question here. How can I fix a bad slice using the linear motion, but not opening the club face? Yeah, so we're actually going to get into that a little bit for sure. But if golfers don't have enough angular, so you can picture how the angular aspect of this club rotating into impact, right? The club face is now facing you. Now it's facing the target. Now it's facing behind me. So the allowing for the angular rotation of the club can be a big way of closing the club face and getting the slice to reduce. There's also rotation about the shaft as well, right? That's happening as you're allowing that angular to happen, which is arguably the more important element to that. But if a golfer were to shunt the angular and just try to hold this thing linear the whole time, you're not going to get the rotation about the shaft, that would fix a slice for free, so to speak, if you're letting the stuff go. So hopefully that makes sense. If you had more linear, like if I were to just say, hey, I had way more linear in impact, right? Or it's actually not linear. It's really not enough angular, right? You can see that face would point way to the right for a right-handed golfer, right? So just something to think about. That was a great question. So again, because I'm holding the grip into the club, when I create this little push and pull, if I can kind of show you here, that center of mass is moving in space, right? It's also rotating. That's really important to understand. All right. So I have the couple. That's one way that I can apply force to the grip. I also have the moment of force. So a good way to show the moment of force would be, and really the moment of force is a net force. So it's really just one vector. It's one net force vector coming out of the grip. So to just illustrate this, if I had the club hanging down like so, if I use the moment of force, right, that's again essentially creating linear motion in the club. If I'm pulling in a direction that is in line with the center of mass. So again, remember my center of mass is right here. If I'm pulling in a direction that is in line with that, can you appreciate how there's no angular movement to this golf club? If, however, again, my center of mass is right here. If I were to pull in a direction that is out of line with my center of mass, right? So here I'm going to pull this way. Do you see how, again, there's no couple here. There's no couple me doing this, right? I've just got my two fingers. Again, center mass is right here. But because I'm pulling out of line with that, are you seeing this club change orientation in space, right? So this would be the moment of force. This would be more of like pulling along the grip. That also changes where the center mass is in space from a linear and an angular perspective. What you need to remember not what you need to remember, what is important if you're going to understand this to remember, as far as the moment of force aspect goes, is that it is going to try to line up with the moment of force. So if I had this club sitting on the ground in this orientation, hopefully you can see this, I'm going to pull the grip straight to the screen. So here we go. I've got my two fingers on the grip, right? This is no couple. I'm going to pull this thing straight to the screen. I'm going to keep pulling this thing straight to the screen, straight to the screen, straight to the screen, right? So did you see what happened? All right, let me do that again. The actual club face was interrupting that. We did that one more time. And do you see what happened to the club as I pulled it to the screen? You see how the center of mass actually started and wanted to line up with the direction of that moment of force. So I was going that way. All right. So that's how the club angularly rotates in response to the moment of force. It tries to line up with it. So when I held the club up like this, right, what is actually moving this golf club? Is it gravity, right? Or is it the moment of force? What is swinging the golf club right now is the moment of force. I'm actually creating a little bit more of a moment of force each time. I'm actually slightly pulling up. Gravity itself, right, would just lower the golf. It would just, if I'm just going to use gravity, because gravity acts through the center of mass, it doesn't rotate, right? So I could have the club in this orientation. If I drop it, again, gravity always acts through the center of mass. So the club does not rotate in response to gravity. The club rotates because right here, I'm pulling up. So by not letting it fall, I'm actually using the moment of force, pulling it up, and the center of mass is going to try to line up with it. All right. So that is why this club is rotating, because it is trying to line up with the moment of force. If I don't amplify that moment of force at some point, right, you can just picture every time it's passing this force vector, right, the club is trying to get back in line with that direction that I'm pulling the grip. Right. So to keep this thing rotating, I got to slightly pull up. And every time I pull up, if that club is out of line with the direction I'm pulling it, the club's going to rotate. Right. So What does this mean in a golf context? Well, when I hold the golf club, my hands are fairly close together, but they're not like overlapping. All right. If they were overlapping, then it'd be very difficult to apply any sort of couple. So with my hands slightly separated here, if I were to exaggerate this, a lot of what gets the club moving in the first part of the golf swing is the couple. All right. So you can see my lead side, my top hand is pushing sort of down and forward. From this angle, you can kind of see it. Lead side is pushing kind of down and forward. Trail side is pulling up and back. Right. I'm not trying to pull it up and back. It's just kind of hanging out. I'm really just using this lead side to push it down and forward. So that, as you can see, is getting my center of mass here to travel, and it's getting it to rotate about itself. Again, now with my hands together, you can see that similar motion happening. All right. What we also get is as I'm creating this push and pull, all right, let me get a question here. All right. Ideally, what we like to see is I'm kind of using my rib cage, I'm using my legs to kind of create this nice push and pull action here. So because my top side is going forward, that's actually turning me and changing the orientation. Okay, can you appreciate how now I am facing over here? Because of how I kind of pushed with this top side, right? So because now I'm over here, that's taking my arms, the weight of my arms and my hands, and it's swinging them away from the target. That is the moment of force. That's moving this golf club, and it's trying to actually translate. It's trying to actually rotate the club that way, but because I also have couple twisting it this way, they kind of balance out nicely, and the backswing looks kind of like so. Right. So the good news about this and kind of creating this nice little kind of push and pull with your ribs and your legs is you don't do it for very long. All right. You don't have to create a ton of work with this. Right. It's more in the kind, if you could think about like a swing set, I'm giving this a little push. Right. And then I get momentum off of that force that I'm creating. So I'm creating some force just from here to about here. And then right around here, this club starts to pick up momentum, right? And it's the actual momentum of the club that is helping to swing my arms. And the weight of the arms is kind of stretching my ribs. So the arm swing in my rib cage gliding back and forth is the moment of force, right? Moving this golf club back up here, changing directions, and then it's going to start moving me back the other way. Right. As I come into impact, right, because I'm rotating and my rib cage is still changing shape, what happens again, I'm pulling the grip up, right? So again, I'm pulling the grip up. That's the moment of force. So I'm pulling the grip up, right? I have a little bit of couple here, but not a ton, right? And that club has really got a lot of momentum. It's trying really hard to line up with this pull up and kind of back and away from the target, kind of like so. So the moment of force is actually dominant at the bottom of the swing. The couple is dominant in the beginning of the swing. So it's kind of, you're using your rib cage, you're kind of creating a nice couple here. You get a little bit of moment of force swing here. You get a little bit of a couple here at the top. This thing kind of changes directions. And then down at the bottom, it's mostly the moment of force kind of pulling me up and then pulling the grip, right? So you get the up and then you get the back as well. And that sends the club head into the golf ball, right? So I would never explain it this way to a new student. I would never tell like a golfer that I only see like a couple times this. And honestly, if I don't really hardly ever tell golfers this information. You can tell me or not if it's helpful, if I need to like figure out a way to like make it a little bit like more concise and digestible. It's really hard to make it digestible, but this is more like if I were to give a presentation for coaches. I feel like for some of you who have maybe ideas around how the body and the club move and swing, it can help kind of take away some of those constraints and like, hey, you have a really like incorrect idea of how the club is moving and how the body is creating these forces. So it could help like take away a constraint, like I said, but it's totally not necessary for you to know. Um, a little bit doing this selfishly because I like talking about this stuff, and I needed something to present with y'all today. Because, like we said before, if you understand strategy, skill, and swing concepts, that's all you really need to know. This is kind of a cherry on top and kind of bonus information for you. So, as far as next week, Thanksgiving, it is my plan for us to not have class. So I think you're safe to anticipate that we are not going to hold class the Tuesday of Thanksgiving, and is obviously the Thursday of Thanksgiving as well. So feel free. Like big focus is just letting y'all enjoy the holiday, travel safely. And then if there's a makeup or anything like that we end up doing, we'll let you know. I wouldn't anticipate it, but yeah, we just want y'all to have a good holiday. And again, thank you for joining and kind of spending these 20-30 minutes here down the studio with me. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and hope to see y'all after the holiday. Have a great rest of your day, guys. If you don't have any questions, yeah, I'll go ahead and yeah, I'll go ahead and let it post to the actual page, so you should be able to go back and see it. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Any other questions or anything? Cheers, y'all.